6:02 p.m. I'll call the Wednesday, June 21st, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Dale Hughes.
Here.
Don Bagley. Chris Cox. Brian Maynard. Phil Hoffman.
He's out there somewhere.
Lee Allen Smith.
Here.
David Wilkins.
Present.
Lynn Burns.
Here.
Landon Magley.
Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There you go. Good, are you? Good.
Walk out of the funeral home and it's pouring down raining.
Open the public hearing on subdivision sketch plan. Call that to order. Leave it open.
Comments.
Motion to close, you need a motion to close?
You can just close it.
We'll just close it. Moving on to number 4, review by P&Z for subdivision sketch plan. Discussion.
Sketch plan should be in your packet. It's been reviewed by the Public Works Director, Tom Warmick, and then showed he and I with information. No objections.
Anyone have questions or comments?
I have questions. Of course they do.
Go ahead.
First of all, for Mr. Borman, since he's here, the plat has a positive north-south line that I believe purports to be the property line between track A and track B.
Yes,
And is squared off, but was given out back when it was annexed, shows a little comet tail. That doesn't exist.
No.
Wanted to make sure, because it isn't on the plat, therefore it becomes sort of an orphan.
right.
They just took more right away than
They,
somebody
the
mentioned.
tax, people, the mappers mismapped it. It has nothing to do with the highway. They got the drawing in the wrong place.
Okay, so it belongs to Mr. Ball instead, then.
Right.
Thank you. Is there any existing easement along Highway 124 on that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. There's a shed out there.
Not on this property. Well, yes, there is. a shed
There
on
is,
this property.
yeah.
Forgot.
And it's not shown on the sketch plat.
I'm sure it's gonna come down.
Is intended to be
Yeah.
demolished.
There's no reason to keep it.
Okay, has anybody talked to the church about people taking shortcuts through their parking lot to get to the subdivision?
Their parking lot is closed off where you cannot do that.
Okay, so everybody will have to come around along.
I'm not saying they can't remove the barricades that are there, but it is barricaded where you can't drive through it this point.
Okay.
Blocked it off on the Rodney Griffin side.
Yes. Well, It's back at the parking lot, but yes, it's
Yeah.
closer to the Rodney Griffin side.
Which way does the drainage go for, a little of it I know goes towards 124, does most of it go north to Rodney Griffin, or does it go south to Mr. Ball?
It goes west. Most of the follows to the west.
Okay. In the most recent version of the subdivision regs, this is probably not a condition for sketch plat approval or anything, but there's an awareness that curb and gutter and sidewalk along the south side of Rodney Griffin will have to be put in.
Yes, the question becomes one of how far. And I'm assuming that could be cut off at the entrance to the church on the south side. And maybe at the entrance to the subdivision.
Oh,
Because it doesn't serve anything.
The manhole is about halfway down on what would be the northeast lot. So
It's,
probably
yes,
be better for, is that a terminal manhole?
yes, it is.
Okay. And despite the fact it goes for nowhere right now, there would be ADA ramps on the sidewalks at the entrance to the cul-de-sac.
Right.
Anybody want to discuss sewer access as coded in the sketch plat now, or wait until improvement plan?
Well, I can tell you what the plan is. Mrs. Ball does not want to give a sewer easement. She's very adamant that she does not want to give a sewer easement to extend the sewer line on her property. There's a water line that, if we try to put a sewer line in, there's a water line that's going to become a problem.
It's on the south side.
Yes. So what Boyd was wanting to do was to put in septic tanks on these and pump to the manhole that is there. It would be private until it got to the city sewer manhole.
That would, given that you have 6 lots, but how you, that's not in evidence, but wasn't he intended to build for 12 units?
No, we could never get that many. I think there's 7 on there.
7 units.
Right.
Okay, well,
Originally,
how
they-
many go directly to sewer and how many are on private facilities? That's gonna be an awful lot of little lines.
Yes. There's one that can access the sewer directly. The others will have to, there'll be easements to get across. They'll all go in the same easement, but I mean, it's a matter of, they're gonna be 1/8 lines.
And if you intend to do 0 lot stuff, as we'll discuss later, each of those units will have to be totally independently
Right.
sewered all the way back to the sewer line.
Right. But they can all be put in the same easement, and they may all be put into a pipe that takes it back there to where they each access.
And it becomes a community sewer, and the state DNR might have something to say about that.
No, these would be private, until it dumps into the manhole or the sewer line.
If they're all joining into one sewer,
Not one sewer. They might all be joined into one piece of pipe where all the individual lines run.
okay, it's just so they don't get lost in the shove.
Right.
I think DNR regs may still need to be researched on that. And we asked for an opinion from Mike about how, we have one house over on Rodney Griffin that has a sump that goes to the lot next to it.
We
And
briefly
how it-
discussed it, he's,
Hmm?
I said we've only briefly discussed it with Mike, so we'll still talk
Okay,
to him
well,
too tomorrow.
that's been in effect for 12, 15 years, and I don't recall problems, but it would be interesting to know
So I did discuss this with Mike, and he had no real objections to it, as long as the city wasn't responsible for the pumps or the lines getting to the city sewer.
There, by the aerial, there's a bunch of trees that are on both sides of the property line.
Right.
Okay, if they are,
Well,
as long as they are, that's good, I think.
They're pretty much on, I mean, they cover the line, I'm not sure which side most of those trees are on. They certainly overhang, into their property, but most of the trees, I believe, are on the ball side, or on the line itself.
Pretty sure Paul would appreciate some sort of visual buffer.
Yes, I'm sure they would.
No further comments or questions?
The intent is not to take out the trees around the perimeter.
That's good.
Is there an agenda packet that? Thank you, sir.
Oh, I have mine, that was the one that was here, for whoever didn't show up.
Any more questions or discussion?
We need to make a motion to approve this. I have it on his,
I see it, I read,
but I'm not sure, for sure. This is the first sketch plot that I've had to do, so. I put it in there because we've approved all the other things, so.
sure, I move that the sketch plat for Riley's Park subdivision be approved as.
Second?
Have a motion and a second, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, revised Southwest Country Estates Plat 5, adding utility easement for additional street lighting.
This, is also in your packet, and I put in a memo, I will tell you from a memo, I copied it from a previous one. Everything from page 1 through 3 is for this meeting, everything from page 4 through 6 is from a prior meeting, so I apologize for that. But anyway, so on page 3, it does show, where this easement would be, and it's just to allow, for another street light, so it'd be a utility easement. Jeff Armstrong looked at this, and that's where he proposed it should go, is in that area. And then, I think this would be ready to go.
Is that different than the storm sewer drain easement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it
The definition.
further to the east?
Further west. No, east, you're right.
Okay. So I was looking at the lots there, that's what I was,
This was necessitated because we changed, from the time the original plat was put in, we changed the location of where the electric is going to be from the front of the lots to the back of the lots.
okay.
So in order to accommodate for a street light, I asked Heather to have, Jeff look at it and see where he wanted the street lights out there, and we would put easements down those lot lines so that he could do that. Otherwise, you gotta loop it all the way around the street.
Yeah.
Which is not very desirable.
He thought just adding one would be sufficient.
That doesn't continue on to the next street to the north, though, it just stops at the north
Right.
edge of the
Right.
east-west easement.
Because there's electric along the north line anyway. No, there already is.
Comments or discussion? Question?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you talking about just one easement for streetlights?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's the way I'm reading it.
Yeah, it's 10 feet wide, 5 foot on either side of the lot line.
Yes, correct.
And it's electric buried, so that will be a little restrictive on people's landscaping.
Yes, but it's what we've done in the past on the streetlights.
Yeah.
Okay, how are you gonna be accessible from Columbia Street at all, or is it gonna dead end right there at Columbia Street?
No, none of these lots will access, and they're prohibited from accessing on not Columbia Street. None of these lots access on Columbia Street. The end lot theoretically could, but, no, it's not intended to do that. I'm not saying they couldn't put a driveway out there, but, you know, for a garage in the back or something, but, you know, you get too close to the intersection, you don't want to do that anyway. Becomes a safety issue.
Right.
But none of them will be allowed to access off of Gano Chance, period.
So you'll have a whole new, you'll do it like we did for flat one, where you had the bust and the survey and had to file a revised that.
No, the plat has not been approved yet. This is going to, city council on Monday night. It has already been approved by P and Z.
All right.
But this is just.
So
the
no,
amendment.
this will be the way the original goes through.
Right, this will be the way the original goes through.
Want a motion?
No,
Yes, if-
you don't need a motion.
Okay.
Oh, I would like one,
No.
just to make sure you're all in favor to recommend it.
No, the recommendation has already been made to approve it
We're just.
a year ago.
So you don't need to make
No,
a motion to approve the amendment?
Yeah, I think you did.
well,
Is the constitution of the commission the same as it was a year ago? Pardon me, the membership.
that,
No.
that doesn't matter though.
It might to some people.
I mean, it wouldn't be bad to have for the record just to approve, I mean, you're just.
You approved the different documents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would accept the motion. So moved.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, so do I change the date for the approval of P and Z? Because I have June 2018, because that's when it was approved.
That's a Sydney question.
I'll have to ask Sydney. I'll send her a message.
And I was going to print that, I almost printed it before I came over, and I didn't quite get that far.
Okay.
Discussion regarding zero lot line. Is it public discussion or discussion amongst ourselves?
Discussion amongst yourselves, you can have public discussion as well. So we've had, a couple of different people, developers, Boyd Harris is one, Don, and had brought it up to me, Darren Adams is interested, but, developing townhouses so that you know, but we don't have any kind of a zero lot line ordinance, so any such house would be considered, you know, multifamily or a duplex. In our current code, that's how it would be defined. Darren disagrees with me, but that is how it would be defined because we do not allow for zero lot lines at this particular point in time. So, if you are interested, the board, we would like to open up discussion about allowing zero lot lines. You have some samples in your packet about other places that allow zero lot lines. And so it essentially allows you to have a townhouse and sell each side.
The man has exquisite time.
I have a question, zero lot lines for developers, who wants to take the question?
What's the question?
The question is, I'm confused on the difference between a zero lot between a townhouse and a multifamily dwelling.
Well, that's very simple. With a multifamily dwelling, you have one ownership of the whole lot. With a zero lot line, you can sell off, if it's a duplex, you can sell off each half. If it's a townhouse, you can sell off each unit.
Each unit has its own address. Instead of an A and a B, you still maintain a party wall and you have a common area.
So,
All the utilities to the building have to be split off so they can be separated for each
Correct.
unit.
so structurally nothing, it's ownership.
Yeah,
Yes.
Structurally, usually what's required on these is that there be a 1 hour firewall between the units. That's not that hard to do. With duplexes, generally speaking, they don't require that, at least I don't think so.
It's a 20-minute, I believe.
The 20-minute, usually when you go to a zero lot line, they want a 1 hour firewall. That's 2 5/8 sheets of drywall. That's not that big a deal. You put that right between your 2 lights on each side. So it does sometimes involve building codes, and it depends upon how the county interprets it, but generally that's the way it's been done in the past.
And then if the board did, was favorable to look at this, then we would need to decide what zone areas you would allow this type of a structure in. City of Moberly, I don't know if I have that exactly. City of Sullivan is R2. Most places are R2 or greater, not in R1.
It is, depending upon what you look at, there are places that allow it in R1, but if you do it in R1, the lot size stays the same. So you've got 7,000 square feet per lot. And it's usually done where there's difficulties with terrain or something, which doesn't seem to be that big a problem in Centralia.
So all the typical setbacks would still apply, front, back, side,
Right, except for the side where the zero lot line is.
just the middle.
Right. So,
You're talking about lot lines for the entire structure.
Yeah, the outside of it would still be.
so typically, and what we were talking about with this is that it would be for R2 and R3 zoning. R2 would be for duplexes, and you could put you don't have to maintain your 5,000 square feet, but you have to have 10,000 square feet for the duplex. But if the house is a little bit off center and one ends up with 4,500 square feet, the other ends up with 5,500 square feet, the average is 5,000, and that would apply. And part of that depends upon how you apply this. You could apply it that 5,000 minimum is the absolute minimum regardless. That's not typically how these are done, because you're asking for a little bit of leeway on this. What you are doing is you're maintaining your 10,000 square foot for a duplex lot. For R3, it's 2,500 square foot per lot, or per unit. And again, that might be a little bit more, or a little bit less. When you do townhouses and you've got like a fourplex townhouse, typically your middle ones are going to be considerably less than that, because you're taking your party wall and you're extending the line straight back, and there's not usually 2,500 square feet when you do that, so it becomes a problem to try to maintain 2,500 square feet. You have to have a very deep lot in order to do that, and that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mr. Harris, does the county allow 0 lot?
The county did at one time, because there are subdivisions in the county that were built that way. Under current guidelines, as I understand it, there really isn't a provision for that, and when I queried county staff, it was generally I don't know why we don't do that anymore. So it went away somewhere, nobody has a real good reason as to why.
You're chairman of the commission down there.
As long, it went away long before I was there.
I know, but you could make a request of staff to do something, could you not?
Oh, we could bring it back and implement it if there was
Any interest?
interest in it. It's probably more of a use that is gonna be in the city rather than in the county.
How about the city of Columbia, do they have it?
City of Columbia does provide it, or does allow for it, and I made that request, and then I went out and banged my head against the wall and assumed I was never going to get it.
Columbia they have a unified code now. It is the most complex, horrible thing you have ever seen. But their zoning and subdivision code is all one, and even the planning staff doesn't know what it means.
Yeah, I went down that road trying to find it. I would not, in our town, by no means would I ever think this would be appropriate in an R1 zone. It needs to be in a multifamily, at least in R2. No reason to say it has to be R3, but I think it definitely needs to be a multifamily type zone rather than an R1.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, it should apply to R3 also, in my opinion, because with townhouses, not with your fourplex that's got 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top, it's hard to kind of do that with that. But if you put them in townhouses, then you can do something like this, and it makes more sense. So it should be allowed for R3, We don't have an R4 zone, which is typically your tower complexes, and it doesn't make sense for those. The other way of doing this is the planned unit development, which Columbia and Boone County do have. And I would highly recommend not going with that method because that is far more complex, it is far more costly for the developers, and you gain, and it's much more time consuming, and you really gain nothing for it.
Seems like that's what the city of Moberly has as well.
They have a zero lot line though.
They have a planned development district.
They may have, but they
Yeah,
do
but
allow these zero lot lines.
But a planned development district is a different animal than a PUD, than a planned unit development. The PUD is much more complex and convoluted, and this can be, the planned development and the zero lot lines can be something that will give some flexibility and maybe something new in town, gets done in a lot of markets. The PUD it's just difficult.
Now, there is another way of doing this. It can be done as a condominium plat, and for that, we don't need city approval, but you only own the paint inside of your walls, the exterior of the unit. There's no division of the exterior lot is a common for both lots. And the ownership is confined to the paint on the walls interior. There's state statutes on how that has to be done.
So it'd still be kind of a landlord taking care of everything outside, kind of.
Just an HOA.
HO,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
HOA in the planned development.
But it becomes,
We should-
people have a little more of a problem with that in rural areas. They are not used to that idea. When I first got involved in surveying, we started those in Columbia, and it took a while for people to adjust to the idea, and they took over, and it's accepted in Columbia. It would be a little harder to accept those for people up here.
It's
The
very
zero
difficult.
lot lines would be easier.
It's very difficult for people to obtain financing on a condo.
Yeah,
But in our market,
yeah.
Now, in bigger markets, it's not that big a deal, but in our market, it'd be very difficult.
there has to be, I think it's 30 or 40% has to be owned by different individuals to begin with. So basically, you have to attract cash buyers from the beginning to buy 30 to 40% of them before anybody could even obtain financing on the rest.
So, I mean, what we're looking at, the planned unit development is much more complex. We're looking for something relatively simple to start with, the zero lot line. It's a planned development, but it is much simpler than going through the planned unit development that Columbia and Boone County have. It would probably work in our market better anyway.
So
I mean, Lynn and I had this discussion many years ago, and we decided not to include one in the zoning because there just wasn't a need for it at that time, but we knew that at some point it would come up.
Is there really need for it right now, for a duplex?
There are
Is the
people who are,
market such that somebody can't buy a duplex and then rent out the other half and be a landlord?
there are people who are interested in this because they probably couldn't afford the financing for buying the whole duplex. This is either a starter market or a retirement type setting.
Seems to me Mr. Adams has been addressing the starter market pretty well.
We're about out of lots again.
So is this something that the board thinks we still can do further?
It's one of those things that's new, it's different. I guess I don't see any reason why not to put it as another tool in the toolbox.
I see, it could be a benefit, but I just think we need to look at, where we want to allow it. I mean, do we want to allow it everywhere?
Well, what I'm thinking is
Put it in
that
certain areas,
If we're gonna proceed, we need to have something
Yeah.
roughly drawn up, here's
Yeah.
kind of the direction we're gonna go, and then we can look at that and then go over the worst case.
Yeah.
I mean, well, basically what I'm asking is something we should look into further.
Yeah, I think so.
we should probably look at, one of these, the PUD sort of design is, you know going in that you're going to have those kind of units. But what I'm hearing from Don is that it would also apply to somebody who buys a lot, happens to be zoned R2. In effect is doing a lot split by building a duplex and then going down the middle and then for being able perhaps to get smaller lot sizes and higher density. I don't know.
No, you're
I
not,
see
no,
that way.
you're not changing your lot size, you're not changing your density. All you're doing is changing whether one person owns the same property or two, but you're not changing your density or your
Well,
lot
I
size
don't
at all.
know, if you do a zero lot line, you end up with 2 lots.
Well, yes. And it is a third step that you go through, or a fourth step. Right now, we have a sketch plat, we have a preliminary plat, and we have a final plat. This would add one more step, you'd have to have a lot split for each lot.
You
And,
wouldn't have a lot split though, would you?
Well,
You just,
no, you have a lot split.
Yeah, you would
Have to
have a
be
lot
one-
split, but you would not change your density.
even if they're addressed individually?
Yes, well, you have to have the lot split, otherwise you have one ownership.
Right.
So you have to have the lot split in order to have 2 ownerships.
Person owns all the property.
But your density remains the same.
But at the very beginning, it's gonna be one ownership.
Right.
So in order to split it off, after the final plat is approved, you come back with it's another plat, basically, that gets approved, that becomes, that shows the lot split, and it's recorded as such in the county records.
To me, you just go in from day one and you do your sketch plat with your unit already drawn on there, with your party walls and everything, and then each lot is split off.
It can be done that way, but if you do it that way, your construction costs will go up, because you'll have to have a surveyor out there actually setting that party wall for you.
Sure.
So why not
But-
do it
but-
after the fact, when it's easier?
But if you're doing zero lot line, in my opinion, you want your your surveyor there.
The way Darren's talking about, you almost have to have the person or company doing the subdivision also being the contractor building the house.
Not necessarily, I mean,
Well,
they can be
no.
separate parties. They're
You
gonna be
end up
working at
with
the
so
same
many
time.
lots with
Right.
each property owner doing his own little thing.
Well, and that's the way it's been done in the past in the county. Each lot was then subdivided after the fact. Because you put the building on there, you come in and you survey the party wall and you divide it according to where the party wall was put in. As opposed to surveying it and marking where the party wall is going to be and then building to that line.
So other than the firewall, let's say you build a townhouse, 4 units.
Right.
The building code is the same as a 4-plex,
No.
except for the firewall?
Basically, the firewall is the difference, but instead of being with a 4-plex, a lot of times you see 2 units downstairs and 2 units upstairs. You don't have that. You may have a downstairs and an upstairs,
But it's all 1 unit.
but that's one unit, yes.
But structure-wise, fire prevention, it's all the same?
The firewall is the only thing that differentiates.
It's just thicker
Yeah.
on the townhouse than
Taller
in the
because
duplex.
it'll go.
It's gotta go all the way to the
It'll
roof.
go out through the roof line.
Okay. Now,
So
when you're
you
talking
eliminate-
a planned development, would that be similar, kinda like what Ron Stewart's kinda got out there behind Subway, where it's all big?
Under the scenario of what's being proposed or asked as a planned development, which the city of Moberly has made work, the city of Kearney makes work, the city of Columbia makes work, with no difficulty and no hiccups at all, under a planned development, what Ron's got out at Remington, it would look exactly like that.
Okay,
Absolutely no different. The only thing that would be different is once that building was built by the developer,
you can own your half.
they would come back in to determine where that party wall is, and then you would have, what, parcel A of lot 5 and parcel B of lot 5, and you would have a deed to parcel A, lot 5, Remington Square subdivision.
Okay.
And then, but there would be a homeowner association structure to take care of common areas and stuff. But then each person would own and maintain, they would have their equity, their ownership.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not that difficult,
Yeah.
folks.
Homeowner association with two people who outvotes the other.
Usually those are set up.
I've had a long day and my tolerance is not real good, folks. Why, you're smarter than that, Lynn.
No, I'm,
With all due
I'm looking at
respect.
the kind of problems that come back to a city who is asking.
Why would you even wanna ask for this if you're only gonna do one? I mean, I think it would be, I guess it's possible to only do one.
But there are ways of setting that up. Usually you get a bank involved or something like that, and they hold it deciding what if there's a problem.
Okay.
There's individual counties in Columbia that just deal with absolute homeowner associations as well.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that, what do you wanna call it, homeowner association, what do you wanna call it, common maintenance agreement, whatever, there has to be some things like that built into it to keep stupid from happening.
But I mean, I've done a condominium before that was for a duplex. And so you got 50-50 ownership. They set it up so there was a tiebreaker. I mean, usually that's a bank or somebody.
So I guess, like, using Ron's for example, for him to go back and try to sell those, he would have to go back, if he didn't already, redo firewalls. If somebody wanted to inspect it and.
Basically, yes, if there's not
If
firewall
we
there.
change the rules
If
where
we
he
change
could,
the rules,
yes.
if that's what you put in there, that it's gotta meet this firewall, code,
Okay.
then you couldn't go back and do the other ones without redoing that firewall between them. Or proving that there was a firewall break between them. And there's two ways of doing this. I mean, this is gonna be something that would show up, it's not gonna be in the subdivision code per se, it's gonna be in the, zoning code.
Yeah.
And so there's two ways of setting it up. You can set it up so that basically anybody can divide something that's already existing, provided they met the building codes. Or you can set it up that this is a separate category, it's allowed in duplex, but it's kind of an overlay district. That becomes a little more complex, but it's,
I would think because of the building codes and the firewall, if nothing else for firewalls having to come through the way they do, I'm not so sure it wouldn't be kind of difficult to
Yeah.
be retroactive and go back into something existing
It'd almost be just pretty much new.
from that day forward.
That's why I'm just curious if it's something that's, go back and,
I guess
we'd
it's
have to,
built
you know,
right to
that,
meet the code, but
duplexes, you know, like Don just brought up, you know, anything existing. But I guess that would be how we decided.
I mean, if they really want to divide it off and they don't comply with the firewalls, they can do a condominium plat by state law. There's really nothing else you can do. But it's a different animal from what this is.
Yeah. Then, like Darren said, you know, who wants to buy just an inside of the box? Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, I truly believe, do.
Yeah.
However, most of our market here still requires financing.
Yeah.
And so it's a financing issue, not necessarily the one issue.
Yeah.
Until the banks become comfortable with it, they don't loan on it.
Somebody has a lot, it's sort of like a flagpole lot, and they build a duplex. The ordinance would have to have some sort of mechanism, because I can't imagine that drawing a line through the middle of the building would always yield a new lot that has street access.
Right.
So there would have to be provisions for easements to get to the street or whatever.
Utilities.
Well,
I will grant you that when trying to do this on a stem lot could be a pain in the butt without a whole bunch of easements and, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not impossible, but it's not likely to happen either.
well,
There's a lot more hoops to jump through.
back to the point I made a little bit earlier, you almost have to go in knowing you're going to do this, because otherwise you might not be doing two individual sewer taps and two individual water taps.
yes. Because these do require that you have individual taps on those. And the ordinance should reflect that, I mean, it should require that. That makes it hard to retrofit them.
I'm not sure what you're getting, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Lynn, that you'd almost have to go into this knowing that's what you were gonna do.
Well, if you build a duplex, some people build duplexes so that each unit somewhere underneath the house or out in front, the sewer lines join and they make one tap. The water lines join and they go to 1 meter. Water is a little bit more difficult that way.
Purnell that I manage over there, each building is on one water meter. Each building is on one 4-inch sewer. And then ties into one 4-inch sewer, runs clear back to that ditch.
So then you sell off individual lots. You have legalese in any case on who is responsible for the maintenance of that joint.
Right. But that's why with these zero lot lines, you have this, the utilities are separate.
Yeah, because this would be a planned development within the R2 and R3 zoning district. So inherent with that is you're going to have to submit a plan for that development from day one, which would show that there would be no way that you could invoke this to say, oh, I built a duplex and then I'm gonna split it in half after the fact, otherwise,
Well, the
you
way
don't.
you're envisioning it, and for Riley's subdivision, as I understand you're proposing it, that's one thing, but somebody else coming along elsewhere, particularly with an existing building that's on a large enough lot, saying, oh, I can't take care of this anymore, I want to make it a separate
Well, we
unit.
can pretty much set up our
If-
codes
yeah, I
and
guess-
rules to limit that.
Well, you have to decide, do you want to include
Yeah.
that possibility, or do you want it all to be like,
Yeah, but if we
Going
do
in.
allow it, we can pretty much regulate it to where they'd have to go back and separate everything before we even allow it.
You don't want to do this in any fashion other than what we do in the county with a planned
Yeah.
zoning, where you have to submit the plan up front and then build to the plan. Yeah, I hear what you're
agree
saying,
there,
but no, this would have to, in order to make this work, and the way it works, is you have to submit the plan up front, so you don't have the potential for that catch that you're talking about. I understand what you're saying, but no, it'd be like a planned district.
Yeah, exactly, that's,
Yeah. And if you were gonna do something other than what was on the plan, you gotta come back.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think we could allow it where just every duplex in town could start popping up and, I don't,
And I guess that comes back to your question, Paul, I don't think this could be retroactive.
no. Yeah.
yeah, well, forgive me, I didn't study Sullivan's proposal, but it seemed to me that it could be made retroactive, and therefore,
It would be
the
rather
tenor of this
expensive.
conversation is if we go at all,
Yeah.
go something closer to Moberly's than to Sullivan's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And if the county actually had something that was usable, my standard recommendation would be to try it and have regulations consistent from one entity to another, so that developers who work in the common areas have common
The
expectations.
county did have such a regulation. They got rid of it a number of years ago. We can probably still get access to what they did.
If White can, I'm not sure we can.
I'd ask.
I asked.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know because one of the
And all
first
three of them were
subdivisions I
like, yeah, we
did,
used to,
the zero lot lines were done in. When I first started surveying, they were done in this, in Meadowbrook West subdivision out southwest Columbia. And those were
Not
a
there,
lot of
it
these
was
lots.
expected. Okay.
But I mean, it wasn't a matter of you didn't do a plan and ask for approval of it. We did a duplex plat. What they had to do in order to comply with this is they had to build it according to the proper standards. The utilities and had to be separate, and the firewall had to be in there, or they couldn't sell it separately. But they did most of it that way. The intent was to do it that way, and so they did. But if they just put it in as a duplex, no, then you can't divide it later on. Unless you separate everything.
Well, I definitely think it's something we need to look at.
Heather can try and find some more ordinances. Since we have two people in the audience who have a dog in this hunt, would it be valuable for you folks to make suggestions as to a possible ordinance? Or is that asking too much?
Quite honestly, I went through the city, I went through the county, I went through 3 or 4 other towns, and of everything I could find, that's why I brought you Moberly's, because the evidence is on the ground and has been for some time that what they have written is working and working very well.
Okay.
I don't know that, I mean, yeah, we could all beat our heads against the wall and you know, it's gonna be just like another project I'm working on at the county right now. We can look at ordinances from across 19 different municipalities and
No, I got it.
find minor nuances, but the bottom line is they're all the same. I thought what Moberly was using and making work was
You said they're doing
simplistic,
planed,
but covering their butt, you know.
you said Moberly was doing planed areas? Or did- Okay.
Well,
Yeah, because
Basically, just take the plan and they review the plan
Yeah.
that you bring on a case-by-case basis.
but it's a planned district within that zoning class, and you build to the plan. You submit the plan up front.
You mentioned Kearney also has something.
That's where I first ran into it years ago and couldn't figure out what in the world. I was working on some appraisals and I couldn't figure out what in the world they were doing. And until I dug into it, and I mean, this was mid to late 90s. And they were, ultimately it was the same thing. They were, you know, for simplistic terms, they were selling sides of duplexes and making it work big scale really well.
Okay. I contacted the city of Marshall as well, but I didn't get, I couldn't find it in their city code, and the city administrator did not call me back, so I didn't have that information.
Moberly's close enough, you or Mike could go up and talk to whoever actually implemented this. See what they have beyond just their bare ordinance.
Okay.
Did I make a note on what I sent you as to who the guy was I talked to up there?
It might be an email you sent me. I can
I
get in
don't know
touch
that I
with-
did, and if I didn't, I can't remember.
We'll get in touch with the public works director. Maybe Tara can help me. So, we could possibly have another sketch plan that we need to look at. I've got an email to Sydney to make sure that we need to do that. It's a very odd situation. But if we do, then we need at least 5 days' notice for that as well, and so we would need to look at setting another meeting, maybe 26th or 27th. And we can bring this back at that time.
This really isn't that convoluted or difficult a concept that it ought to have to be beat that hard
No.
No.
to see that it's a reasonable thing to do.
You talked about road? Or which
The plan-
concept?
The plan development,
Okay.
Yeah.
that concept in general.
Don't disagree, I just want to make sure the ordinance is workable and doesn't bring surprises.
well, I don't wanna stack a bunch of planning on the front end, I'd rather put that on the back end.
Well, if you have a subdivision zoned for R2 and platted for R2, you might need covenants to make
Plan on
it
the front.
explicit about whether you will
Right.
allow.
And are we looking at doing it R2 for the simple fact of square footage of lot? Or why are we so anti-R1?
I could not find, in the research I was doing early on, I couldn't find any municipality that was allowing it in an R1 district.
Okay.
And I think
Probably also too from the mountain to die on or which fight to fight. It might be easier just to go
Well,
with it that way.
And what's the trailer court zoned?
R1.
Okay? And can you remind me of the steps that it takes to get it rezoned?
You have to submit a request, planning and zoning.
Okay?
Which trailer court?
Written or formal?
Well,
Like
written,
me
written
requ-
would be formal,
Right, but be requesting right now?
in writing. We would need it in writing, spelling out exactly what it is you're wanting and why you're wanting it.
You don't,
Is there
Both of
is
them?
there an application for a
No.
rezoning request? Okay.
The one on Lakeview,
And the one on
Please,
Alpha.
yes.
is there a form for that?
I don't
and
think so.
Allen and
I don't think that's
Alpha.
the form.
Well, I mean, I can
Allen,
see,
Lakeview, Allen and Alpha.
I mean,
Could be.
I'm assuming
Benefits.
everybody would like to see those go bye-bye.
you know,
And
it's,
quite honestly,
even like.
I didn't know how those would
They
go, so
exist.
I didn't say that
Yeah.
because of that. I just,
Property.
I just, I'm not sure that's a mountain to win.
All of them
So I can see
exist
benefits
before
with, I
zoning was
mean,
Right.
we've got some duplex behind us on Orchard.
That's probably
So
the
they're in essence
was
grandfathered.
grandfather, that's probably the only reason that those are in an R1 is because it was long before R1 ever came about. Yeah.
That's why I have mixed, you know, what, would you wanna go back and be able to split those down the road, or just right here is it, and here, you know?
I think it would be
Yeah.
easier just what we implement going from there forward.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be in our best interest to try to go back and, you know, people are not gonna wanna pay that extra.
Well, no,
money.
as I say, I don't think they'd ever would, but.
But
if
it's
they
the
did,
unintended
they'd allow-
consequence that, on trying to make it retroactive, that there'll be somebody want to drive that triangle peg in that round hole.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Dale,
Yeah.
that don't even ask for that problem.
Well, I mean, it depends on how it's set up, but if it's set up properly, you know, and you have to have the utilities and everything.
Well, yeah, as I say,
separated.
if we have it set up, I mean, if you have a duplex that's rented right now, I mean, if you got somebody that owns each half, they may take more pride in it than renters. So that's what I was saying, would you wanna allow it to go?
Well, you can
some
allow
of
the
an opportunity
retroactivity,
to be
but
able
they
to go
still have
back.
to meet the requirements
Yes,
of
yes.
separated utilities.
Yeah, they
and
gotta do all the
firewalls.
requirements, but I
Right.
mean, if we wanna allow it, I mean, that could open this up
But if they
even
want,
bigger
if they
around.
want to tear down the apartment because there was a fire there or something,
Yeah.
and they want to build it back in, they can build it back
Yeah.
into the standard.
That'd be fine.
But it's very hard if you
Or
don't,
do
unless
we
you tear
wanna
it down
limit
to
it
do that.
to
No.
entire area, you know?
I can see if, as time goes on, somebody has a duplex, they have two owners.
Yeah.
One owner just dies and the heirs decide they want to be landlords, so you end up with a tenant on one side in any case.
Yeah.
The reason I'm leery about this and want to make sure the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed is that building down in Jeff City with the common wall where one half of it's falling in and the other guy has perfectly good building and can't seem to make his way through the city system.
That's true, but we would have the same thing here in town, if something like that happened. This happened in other cities. Because we do have zero lot lines, it's called downtown.
Yes.
Dang, that's a good argument. Wish I'd thought
Well, dang, why are we here? So,
that. Exactly.
maybe do.
Okay.
So we need to, if you don't want to discuss further, we can set the meeting date.
Let's say,
I'm not sure
yeah.
I may be in Durango, Colorado then. We'd appreciate that.
And you want us to feel bad for you?
No, but he might be the quorum.
Yeah, we needed everybody tonight to get a quorum.
And we're gonna have a problem at the next meeting. Yeah, this will be my last meeting. So you're gonna have a problem with quorum at your next meeting, sorry. That's official, right?
Fire there.
Not until you put it in writing, I don't know, we cannot accept it.
You're not gonna have a real problem getting a quorum.
Appointments are for fixed terms.
You
As
Okay,
soon as we
so
get
we
enough
can get
people,
new-
we'll have another meeting.
New chair and 2 new members.
I say we hold off setting another meeting date at this point until we, have a new chair and, have a new reappointment, so.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn. Have a motion.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Means adjourned.
No, I didn't do it.
September 21st.